What's going on, everybody? Blade55555 here, and today I'm going to be presenting to you a guide on Rus. This is going to be a pretty comprehensive guide, and as a warning, this is going to be a pretty long video, because I plan on going over the basics of Rus first, for example, their specialties, their bonuses, whatever you want to call it, and then I'm going to be going over all the matchups and how I approach them or what I think is best against these civilizations. As a warning, these are going to be my opinion or how I approach it. Obviously, this can change in the future. It could change tomorrow for all I know. But I do plan on going over all the matchups, Rus versus English, China, French, Rus versus Rus, so on and so forth. This is going to feature footage from probably mainly other players because it's very hard to have replays of all these matchups, especially since the game only saves 10 of them. So, with that being said, let's start off with the Rus civilization and an overview of them. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of go over their basic bonuses. One good thing about Rus is their hunting cabins, which are the same as a mill for every other civilization, generates gold depending on how much wood is nearby. Another cool thing about Rus is the wildlife that you kill gives you bounty, which increases how fast you gather and how fast you get gold from your hunting cabins, for example. I will showcase all three of these, but first let's just go over this. So a sheep gives you 5 gold, so for each sheep killed you get 5 gold. For every deer you kill you get 10 gold. A wolf gives you 25 and a boar gives you 75 gold. The goal that you want to get to, the ideal situation would be to get it to 500 bounty. In 1v1s, that is really, really, really hard to do. But 250, which is the second highest you can go, is something you should be able to get to without any problems. And then I believe the first one starts at 150. So 150, 250, 500. If you can get to 500, trust me, that feels good. But 250 is what you'll most likely get to. I mean, you'll get between 250 and 400. Rus also has the early knights available in the feudal age. They cannot build stone walls. They have stronger palisade walls, which have 3,000 health instead of 1,500, but there are no stone walls. And then hunting cabins, which again are the same mills, also can produce scouts, so you don't have to use a stable or make a from your town center if you don't want to. Then the other nice thing is they have wooden fortresses, which are stronger outposts. They cost 175 wood instead of 100. They can garrison 8 villagers instead of 5. And if they're placed next to a mill, your villagers will drop off 20% more wood. Which, to give you perspective, without wheelbarrow, a villager drops off 10 wood. With the wooden fortress, it's 12. And that's every villager that does it, as long as it's in line of sight of a lumberjack. Or not line of sight, if it's in the radius of a lumberjack. And I'll go over that in just a moment as well. Their last bonus is that their fishing ships don't have to return to a dock to drop off food. And now they have 3 unique units. And so the first one is their Imperial unit called the Streltsy, which is think of it as a hand cannoneer but better. And then there's the Warrior Monk, which is like a monk but it rides on a horse and can attack. So you know how a wolf can kill a monk, grab me a relic, or take in a sacred site? Yeah, a wolf can't do that to a Warrior Monk. A Warrior Monk will just be like, what are you doing? And stab it. And then the last thing, and then there's the Horse Archer, which is actually a pretty decent unit, and that will be showcased in a few matchups later in this video. And then, I mean, the Lodius ship is also considered a unique unit, but it's just a fishing ship that can also transform into attack ships. But that's about it. So now I'm going to showcase some of these in game to kind of show you exactly what I'm talking about with the bonuses, and we'll cut right to it. Alright, so let's begin by showcasing, again, some of the bonuses we talked about earlier. Earlier we were talking about the bounty, which is where the gold sheep give 5 gold, deer 10, wolves 25, boars 75. Right here, this is kind of where it shows the 3 tiers of the bounty. So if you kill 100 gold worth of anything. It doesn't matter. It could be a mix of sheep, deer, wolves, whatever. You get plus 5% food harvest rate, and your hunting cabins generate gold every 27 seconds. If you get 250, which you should be able to do in almost every single 1v1, obviously there's some games where you just get unlucky, you should get tier 2, which gives you 10% harvest rate increase for food, and then 24 seconds to generate gold. If you're lucky, or if you go the high trade house, you can get tier 3, which is then a 15% food harvest rate, and cabins generate gold every 18 seconds. And as you can see also right here, if you look down in the gold letters, it says gold bounty values, sheep, deer, wolf, and boars. Now I want to also showcase, again, the hunting cabin we were talking about. You can build a scout, and then it just acts like a cabin. And then you can see this 19 gold a minute. You're actually going to see this go up here when I demonstrate when I show the bounty here in just a moment. This is what it looks like when you kill a sheep. You get plus 5 gold. If you kill deer, it's the same thing. And we're gonna get 100 bounty here real quick, just to kind of showcase what I'm talking about in terms of the hunting cabin, because this will actually go up once we get to 100. But while we wait for that, I now want to also showcase the hunting cabin. You can kind of see by this orange radius that it gets that bonus where you get 20% extra wood with a villager drop off. So this is not finished, by the way, and I did this on purpose. So I'm going to put these 2 villagers on wood to kind of showcase you, to show you. And then we'll just go kill a wolf or something here real quick. And I just want to demonstrate the bonus here. Unfortunately, this does take a minute here. And then, so as we can see, we're going to have 10 wood. And boom. So we got 20 wood there. Now let's finish this. And let me showcase how much you get now. Yes, I could have made this more professional by editing this part out, but I didn't want to. So I just want to showcase. Bam. That is an extra 4 wood we got extra for free. As you notice, the villagers only carried 10, but it gave you 12, and that's because of this bonus. If you actually, if you cut deep into a wood line, and let's say you cut all the way back here and forgot to make a lumber mill, you would have to make another one so that you can extend the influence. Otherwise, you will not get that bonus from this tower, and you would have to make a new tower. But as long as you extend the influence, then you don't have to remake this tower at this wood line to get the bonus. And now, as you're going to see, we're at 110 gold, and we're now generating 21 gold a minute instead of the 19 it was earlier. And now we're going to go over the landmarks. In this part, I am going to cut a little bit so you don't have to watch, it being built the entire time. But for Feudal Age, Rus has 2 landmarks. The Kremlin, which is a glorified wooden fortress. It is just a wooden fortress, same bonuses, except it comes with arrow slits, already upgraded, along with the castle turret and the castle watch technology. So it's just a fully upgraded wooden fortress on Age Up. To be honest with you guys, this landmark is very meh. There's a reason nobody builds it and everybody builds the Golden Gate. This Golden Gate is one of the best landmarks in the game, I would say. And what it allows you to do is, no matter what, every minute you get a tick. You can build these ticks up for as long as you want. It can build up to 20, 100, doesn't matter. Obviously, you should be using it, just otherwise, why are you making the landmark? But what this beautiful thing lets you to do is you can sell 100 gold and get 150 of that resource. Or you can buy sell wood or food or stone, and you're going to get 150 gold no matter what. The market price does not matter. If you have 10 ticks and you sell 1,000 wood, you're going to get 1,500 gold. Hopefully I did not do my math wrong. I didn't think that through exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. It's the same with buying. If you're going to buy a resource, if you're going to buy food, you're going to get 150 food for 100 gold, no matter what. And so, we're going to demonstrate this, of course. So we're going to build our landmark. and let this go through. Alright, so here's our completed landmark, the Golden Gate. And now just to demonstrate, this is where the ticks go. You will see this will build as time goes on. I'm going to just demonstrate it though, so this is going to go down. And then as you can see here, exchange 100 gold for 150 food, exchange 100 food for 150 gold. Again, doesn't matter what the market price is. This is what allows you to be very flexible. In a build I'm going to show you later with Roos, is there's an aggressive build, and then when you want to go to castle, you'll typically have 5 of these already saved up, and you'll just sell a bunch of extra wood or food so you can hit that castle age when you're ready. Or if you want to go 2 TCs, you can buy stone twice with 200 gold instead of gathering it. You'll notice Roos players do not gather stone when going 2 TCs in the feudal age. They buy it from here because it's cheap and your opponent doesn't know. You're not giving it away. Your opponent has no idea if you're going 2 TC until they scout it. And so just to kind of showcase again, you're going to notice that we're at 100,000 stone. We're going to buy stone here. Well, now I look stupid, but you know what? I'm going to keep this in because I don't care. But this is above 100,000 now. It just doesn't show because it's at 6 digits. Either way, now we're going to go over to the Castle Age. In the Castle Age, we have 2 landmarks. The first one is the High Trade House. This acts like a hunting cabin, but as it says here, the value is increased by 200%, so it gets more gold, and it spawns deer every 60 seconds, and also acts like a mill. Hence the kind of a glorified hunting cabin. This landmark is actually, in my opinion, severely underused. I think not many players use this, and there's maps where you can't really get a good high trade house. But on Highview, for example, which is a map which is covered by hidden forests, I think it's probably smarter to go this landmark over Abbey of Trinity. But that's not the case of this, so let's go over to the second 3rd Age landmark, the Abbey of Trinity. This is a monastery that can produce warrior monks at half the cost. So instead of spending 200 gold per minute, or 200 gold for a warrior monk, you're going to get 1. And then it contains unique upgrades, which I will showcase here in a moment. For the case of this video, I'm just going to do the Abbey of Trinity and showcase that, and just kind of show you what I'm talking about. Okay, and now to showcase the Abbey of Trinity. We're going to make a warrior monk just so you can see what it looks like. And this is where the unique upgrades are going to come in. So the herbal medicine is not a unique upgrade, neither is piety, probably said that wrong, and neither is the barns. These 3 are available in the monastery as well. The 3 unique upgrades, however, are these bottom 3. The improved blessing, which increases the damage granted by Saint's Blessing by +1. And I don't think I explained that part yet, but the warrior monk, when it attacks, it provides a buff to your nearby units, where it will increase their damage, and I can't remember if it does their armor. I don't think it does their armor. I think it just increases their damage. And yeah, we'll look at that in just a second here. Then there's Saint's Reach, which increases the range of Saint's Blessing by 3 tiles. And then there's the Blessing Duration, which increases the Saint's Blessing by 10 seconds. So, okay, so here it is. After striking an enemy, the warrior monk increases the armor and damage of nearby Rus military units for a duration of time. This is actually pretty strong, and it's something that has been underutilized for a long time, but it's kind of grown in popularity lately, I would say. A lot more Rus players are making sure to keep their warrior monks to utilize these bonuses. That's kind of another reason why you see the Abbey of Trinity get chosen over the High Trade House, is you get these bonuses, and you can get this out much quicker than if you advance to the 3rd Age, build a monastery, and then you have to pay 200 gold for your warrior monk instead of 1. And then just as you can see, this is what it does. It has a little staff that it can attack with. It doesn't do very much damage, but it is actually a very nice unit. And now to go over the last landmark, the tombed landmarks. There's 2. There's I'm not even going to say it. This is just the tower, which is actually more like a fortress, I should say, or a keep. And then there's the high armory. You are very rarely going to see this ever created, because for a defensive tower or keep, it's really not that worth it. Because that's all it is. That if your opponent isn't attacking that area, it's never going to be used, right? But then there's the High Armory. This decreases the cost of siege units by 20%, obviously from the Siege Workshop. It also has unique siege engine capabilities. I believe it's like increased range for the Springald. It's like 0.5 tiles, and has a couple others, which I will go over here in just a moment. For this case, we are going to create this. And so to kind of show what I'm talking about, you see this big golden radius. Any Siege Workshop in that radius gets the bonus where it's 20% cheaper. So let's create that, and then we'll go over that here in just a moment. Alright, so now to kind of demonstrate, this is what the High Armory has. Banded Arms, which again, this is unique to Rus, where it increases the Springalds by 0.5 tiles. Wandering Town, ram damage is increased by 100%. And then this makes trebuchets and mangonels set up and move and stuff instantly, so it doesn't have that delay in animation. And then it has fine-tuned guns, which reduces the reload time of bombards by 20%, which again is actually a very strong upgrade. And now to kind of demonstrate, this bombard here is 320 wood, 480 gold. The trebuchet is 400 wood, 200 gold. This is out of the radius, and that's 400 wood, 600 gold. That's a savings of 120 gold and 80 wood, right? That's actually, the gold is the important part. The wood is nice, but it's not the necessary. And then you're saving 100 wood and 50 gold on this. But that's just kind of an example. That's 20% savings. And then the last things I kind of wanted to show while I was here was the unique units. This is the Horse Archer. As we can see, it's a horse archer on a horse, or an archer on a horse that can run around. It actually has pretty high DPS, very good for raiding, and actually can do decently in combat situations, especially mixed with a warrior monk or knights. This unit we will be demonstrating later on in this video, showcasing the use cases and whatnot. And then the last unique unit is the Streltsy. This is again pretty much a hand cannoneer, but it's stronger. When it stays in place, it gets stronger if it's stationary. I can't remember the exact numbers to it, but if you keep it in one place, it'll do more damage per shot. I think up to like maxes out at like 3 or something. I don't know the exact numbers on it. And it costs it's cheaper than a hand cannoneer. It is a little slower, but again, more damage. And that's kind of it when it comes to Rus's like landmarks, their units, and now what we're going to do is we're going to move into the matchups and go from there. All right, the first matchup we're going to be going over is Rus versus Rus. I'm going to go over what I think is the best to do in this matchup and what I've had high success with. I think this game's also a good demonstration to showcase why I think a fast castle build is better than what my opponent does in this game. Again, I'm not going to be going through this entire game. As we can see, this is a 58-minute game, pretty much an hour. The only things I'm going to go for here is I'm just going to kind of demonstrate the opening, the unit compositions, and then that's pretty much it. So I'm not going to go over and commentate this whole game, and then we're going to move on to the next matchup and what I think. So the first thing you want to do in this matchup, I mean, this is actually, the opening is the same, and I think against any Civ in the game right now, is you're always going to make a second scout out of your town center. You're going to send 2 villagers to your hunting cabin. After this hunting cabin is finished, make sure you have one of these shift-click to build a house, the other shift-click to build a lumber camp, and then both these villagers will be gathering wood the entire time. With your scouts, what you want to do, you want to send 1 scout across to your opponent's side of the map to try to get their wolves, their deer, and so on. As you can see, we grab his wolf. We're getting our own deer with our second scout, and then the third scout is going to go over here, because, for example, this one is getting the hunts here, then it's going to scout over here for sheep and hunts. The third scout's going to go over here again to do the same thing, going for wolf, hunts, and gathering sheep, of course. And then you're going to put all your villagers onto sheep, because you need food to advance, obviously, and you do not need to gather gold. That's kind of the nice bonus of Rus. You do not need to gather gold to go feudal age, because again, that bounty system allows you to get the gold needed to not only go feudal, but also get wheelbarrow before you even go up to an age. That's why we have these 2 villagers on wood, to get the wood so that we can get wheelbarrow, and then we go feudal afterwards. After you get about 6 villagers on food, you add 1 more to wood, and then the rest go on food until you advance. The moment you hit 50 wood, you should be able to afford wheelbarrow. Now, if you're in a game and you're thinking you're not going to get enough to advance, let's say you're just having a bad game, you're not getting good bounty, you don't think you're going to get enough gold to get wheelbarrow and advance. Do not get wheelbarrow if that's the case. You do not want to have to gather gold to advance. You might as well, that's just really bad. So on the off chance you have a game like that, do not get wheelbarrow. But again, you should be able to. In a Roost Mirror matchup, you should have no problems doing so. Our opponent, for example, could have as well, as we can see. He hasn't though, kind of a little mess up on his part. But anyway, so you can get the wheelbarrow. If you have extra sheep, don't forget you can use a villager to kill that sheep to get the gold needed so that you can advance and get wheelbarrow if that's what's needed. From this point on, it's just kind of basic stuff. We're just going to skip forward a little bit now. And when we advance, you want to put 6 villagers from food to the landmark, and then you want to start rallying villagers to wood. With this build, I think I put about 6 villagers or so on wood. I can't remember off the top of my head, but so we're going to see. Again, you're going to notice as you're advancing, you should be able to make a wooden fortress, because again, you want that buff. And even though we're doing fast castle, the reason why we want the villagers on wood is because we're going to be taking a boar. The boar is the fastest food income, at least for the ground. I think it's faster than deep sea fish. I'm not entirely sure on that though. And as you're going to see, we're sending 8 villagers to take our boar, along with our scouts, and you want the extra wood so that you can build a hunting cabin for the boar, and then you also want to build a wooden fortress so that you don't die to harass. What you typically want to do, have your scout shoot first, send your villagers forward, and start stabbing it to death. Once you do that, you're going to take the boar, and obviously on this map, we're getting 18 gold a minute. We're building this wooden fortress, which is going to turn out to be a good thing, because if he goes knights and we just have this, we're going to lose villagers and just lose the game. So this wooden fortress is necessary to defend your boar. And as you're going to know, we have 6 on wood. All the rest of our villagers are going to food because we want to get to Castle Age. And we want to get to Fast Castle to go Horse Archers. In this matchup, Fast Castle Horse Archers is stronger than going stable units. In my opinion, and in my experiences, I've shown that, and I think this game will also demonstrate that nicely. Now, you do want to add in stable units later on, but for the beginning, you're just going to use archery ranges and go from there. Because you'll notice our opponent here is gathering gold, and he actually makes a knight and tries to harass, whereas we're advancing by 735 to the Castle Age. We're going to Abbey of Trinity because we want to get the relics and try to deny our opponent relics if possible. And our opponent is just going to go stables because his plan is to go knights or horsemen. So let's kind of skip forward a little bit. He tries to harass with a knight. I don't think he ever kills a villager here, but that's besides the point. As we're advancing, we're making archery ranges, and we're rallying villagers to wood, because we need archery ranges and then horse archers, which are about 80 food and 40 wood. So they're pretty food heavy. Still very cheap, just to put that on the record. They're just a cheap unit. Very mobile, which is why they're the preferred way to go. And you typically, if you do the build correctly, you should be able to be producing from 4 archery ranges. I didn't put as many villagers on wood in my age up as I should have, which is why we're only on 3 when we should be on 4. It is a mistake on my part, but that's alright with the point of this. So as you're going to see here, we're going to be utilizing our horse archers for map control. Our opponent is going knights. And what we're going to end up doing here is snagging the relics, because that's kind of the point. Early Castle Age, you want to go, again, horse archers, make a couple of warrior monks, grab the relics. I'm going for this relic, and this relic first, because that denies him from getting a relic. We won't be able to get this relic since it's on his side of the map. And since he's going knights, it's a little bit harder for him to contest, whereas we just kill his stuff with our horse archers, denying again the relics, and we just snag that relic there. Now, what you want to do with horse archers at this point of the game is, again, you want to use it as map control. Now, you don't want to throw them, suicide them. You know, there is a wooden fortress. But like here, for example, is a good spot. You know, you want to try to hit the food sources, deny food for your opponent, and any other source that you can. And then for blacksmith upgrades, you want to get your attacks here. And then once you get the gold, you want to get this Boyar's Fortitude. You should be able to get Boyar's Fortitude after you get +1 or +2 ranged attack. And then this should be your next one. But as you can see, our opponent's just losing knights, trying to raid us. They do get some villager kills here and there, more my sloppiness than anything else. But we have complete map control. We have both sacred sites. And we're able to kind of get food wherever we want. Again, wooden fortresses are very key, especially if your opponent is a civ that can raid you with knights. So we're going to skip forward again. There's not too much more I want to go over, but I just want to demonstrate kind of the power of these horse archers. We end up killing, I think we kill all but one villager here. Yeah, one villager, so he lost 7 villagers there. He's on 2 TC, got a second TC a little quicker than us. We prioritize upgrades. And now we're going to start adding in our own knights, and then we're going to be adding in siege shortly, because you're going to need trebuchets to take down your opponent's defensive structures, and all that stuff. Horse Archer Knight, in my opinion, is a lot stronger than, is going to counter Horseman, it's going to counter Knight, Knight Archer, because all you have to do is get rid of the knights, and then your knights are going to crush his archers, whereas horse archers do good amount of damage to knights, unlike normal archers. And then as you can see, we have 20 more military. He does have a little bit more villagers because he went second TC really quickly, but he also completely concedes map control. And then the last thing I kind of want to demonstrate is, let's see, you're going to notice that we keep adding warrior monks, because you're going to start floating gold with this, because it's very food and wood heavy, not as much gold, because with the relics and sacred sites, I have 600 gold a minute. And so we just start adding in knights, make sure to always get your blacksmith upgrades. And then on maps like this, you should be spamming wooden fortresses across the map. It gives you vision so you can see raids before they ever come. It also allows you to react to, it just gives you, like I said, gives you vision, and with Springhold emplacement, it makes it hard for your opponent to do much harassment. Just kind of a very strong thing you should be doing on maps like this, especially. And pretty much what I'm doing is I just kind of want to demonstrate the strength of this composition over my opponents. As we can see, you know, they've gotten some villager kills, but their army is very low. Because again, I mean, knights are an expensive unit composition, right? 140 food, 100 gold, whereas a horse archer is 80 food, 40 wood, so you can just spam so many of them. Then once you have your economy set up, you add in your own knights so that you can use them to, again, take out archers or, you know, his horsemen in this situation. And then you can use siege to take down these. And, yeah, I mean, so that's pretty much all I want to go about in this matchup. This is kind of the composition you want. When the game goes late game like this, what you end up wanting to do is you go Imperial. You're going to go Streltsy. Streltsy Horseman is probably the composition, obviously with Siege, of course. You want Streltsy because it just melts everything else. Horseman so that you can catch your opponent's Siege. And all that kind of fun stuff there. I mean, as you can kind of see, our opponent's trying to engage because we're putting on a lot of pressure. And we do lose a trebuchet stupidly here, but his army got absolutely spanked, right? He lost his entire army. We're at 35 military. Our opponent's at 14. And our army is a lot stronger because he's only going knight horseman. In this situation, I think I could have ended this game if I had gotten more trebuchets quicker. Added in my own springolds, and I think this game would not have lasted. It shouldn't have lasted as long as it ended up doing. As we can see, it lasts 58 minutes. But again, this video is just to kind of demonstrate the unit compositions and what you want to do here. And that's about it for the Rus matchup, or Rus versus Rus matchup. This is how I recommend going about it. Again, when you do get Castle Age, you do eventually want to add this second TC, usually after you collect the relics, because that gold income will allow you to buy it, and then you have excess wood to do so. And now we're going to move on to the next matchup. Alright, this next matchup we're going to go over is Rus versus HRE. This can be a tricky matchup if you're not sure what you want to do. In general, the one thing you don't want to do is let HRE boom freely without any pressure. If you go, like, I don't think going fast castle is the best build order to do versus HRE, because then their fast castle is actually faster than yours. I believe you can get fast castle completed with HRE by about 7 minutes, 7:30. Whereas as Rus, you're going to be starting your fast castle at about 7 minutes, 7:30. Depending on spawn location, you know, how good your... just how things are going. So what I like to do in this matchup is be aggressive. As you can see here, I'm looking over another player. I'm looking at Wham versus Caspa. This is kind of... I did watch this replay beforehand to make sure it did what I would do, and this does. What Wham is going to do here is he's going to do what I would say was popularized by Iagaz, an Australian player, and then has been adapted and more refined as time has gone on. Pretty much the build. The opening is very much the same as what you saw in the Rus versus Rus. You're going to have a couple on wood. You're going to go 3 scouts because, again, you want to get all the hunts, wolves, deer, and sheep. And then you're going to gather food, go feudal age. You're going to take a boar, but there's going to be a big difference. Instead of going fast castle, you're going to be rallying villagers to wood until you get about, I want to say, you want to top out at about 16. And some players do this, some don't. I do when doing this build. You're also going to get double broad axe, and you're going to do a very heavy archer push. You can do archer knight, archer spear. It just kind of depends what you're comfortable with. I think knight archer is a very good composition to do against HRE, because knights are in general very strong and much better than horsemen. So we're going to skip forward because the opening of this is very, very similar to what we did. He has the 3 on wood, and he transferred some to wood because he ran out of sheep. So we're going to just ignore that mistake. Again, going to go feudal age with the golden gate. Everything's going to look very similar to what you saw before. In this game, what you want to do is we're going to go for this boar. It is a little more forward, but that makes it so that we can make our military buildings here, which makes our reinforcements to attack much quicker. This is a second boar, which, by the way, is actually in a really good spot. Because what Wham can do when he gets rid of this boar and he's done with it, well, he can take these deer first, but then he can just grab these villagers, move them up here, kill this boar, and start gathering the second boar. He doesn't have to walk all the way across the map to do it. And then you're going to see very similar things. Again, he uses scout, and then he gathered the boar. Now, what you're going to notice that Wham is not doing is he's not building a wooden fortress. And that's because he's playing against HRE. They're not a very aggressive civilization. HRE as a civilization wants to get to Castle Age. Their feudal age is their weakest part in the game. They probably have one of the weakest feudals in the game. So their goal is to get to Castle Age if possible. So there's no reason to rush a hidden fortress or a wooden fortress here, because you're going to be the aggressive player. So you can use, instead of spending 175 wood on a wooden fortress, you can just straight out spam your archery ranges immediately. You're going to notice we have 3 archery ranges, and then we have a blacksmith, and then we have this to make knights at home. Again, you don't need to put all your production up here, but this I completely agree with. And you're going to use the knight to harass. It forces spears. So you know what your opponent's going to do. Most HRE players are going to go horseman spear, which is actually a strong composition until Knight Archer gets in big numbers. Once Knight Archer gets in big numbers, Knight Archer is the better composition. Now, you can't always kill your opponent in feudal, and you have to remember your goal shouldn't be to kill your opponent. Your goal with this build should be to deny crucial resources like hunts, like berries. Like this is a great example. He's harassing with this knight, forcing his villagers off of here, forcing an outpost, and then using archers to try to snipe out the spear, or the spears. What's going to be a great example of this build is this does go to Castle Age, and it's going to demonstrate why this Golden Gate is so powerful that I talked about earlier. You're going to notice the ticks are building. We're getting siege engineering because we want to get rams to, put on pressure. We want to take out this, try to deny this food source, because HRE without food can't get to Castle Age. No civilization can get to Castle Age without food, if you didn't know. I know, it's very odd to hear that, but it's a very true statement. And then from there, you can get +1 steeled arrow. You can get, which is what I would do, or if your opponent was going archers, you can go +1 melee. And then as you can see, horsemen are out. Wham's going to cancel his ram. I almost said his name. And he's going to build it here. And he's going to put on pressure again to try to deny this food. It's going to be hard to deny this gold. It's kind of far back in the back of the base. He'd have to go all the way around, and then he has a tower to deal with. So his goal at this point is just to deny food. And if he thinks he can kill his opponent, he's going to go for the kill. Now, the one thing I will say that I would have done that Wham did not do this game is I would have added a barracks or two and added in spearmen. I would have gone archer, spear, and then some knights, just so that, because archer or spearmen destroy horsemen, and then your knights are obviously destroy them too. But he doesn't have archers. He has no way to counter spearmen himself, whereas you do. You have archers to kill his spearmen, and then if you have spearmen yourself, you just destroy his horsemen, and there's nothing he can do. I think if Wham had done that, he might have been able to just flat out kill or do a lot more damage to the HRE player. It ends up not mattering because HRE he did engage a little early. He's getting a little desperate for food. He ran out of sheep. His food sources are in the front, which is allowing Wham to just deny these precious food sources. But what you're going to see is, again, we still have 2 ticks. We've been using ticks to get upgrades. For example, the steeled arrow, the +1 attack is what we got. He put 23 villagers on wood. He never got the double broadaxe. I disagree with that decision, but that's kind of a personal opinion. And I can't, like I said, without... What you would do is, if you're doing the broadaxe version, you get double broadaxe almost as soon as you hit feudal. You will have to use this to probably sell some food for the gold to do so. But then as you're going to see, the point of the build is still the same. Deny resources. Taking them off the hunts is huge. And then the rams to put on pressure and see if you can kill them or not. I do think, again, if spears were added here, I think you could have potentially just killed Casva, killed the tower. 2 or 3 rams on this kills it. Kill the villagers with archers, and obviously kill spearmen with archers, and then spearmen to take care of his horses. But in this game, it doesn't do that, and which is actually a good thing because it kind of demonstrates the transition period. This is an aggressive build, but it is not necessarily an all-in. Now, if your opponent gets Castle Age and you did 0 damage to him, yeah, you're kind of just screwed. But you should be able to do some damage, or at least make it where you both reach Castle Age at the same time. What you're going to see here is Casva's going to hold this off. He's going to destroy both rams, and he's going to take out a portion of Wham's archers, which then kind of slows down the attack. Still has a good mass, but what he's going to do now is he's going to go Castle Age. He's going to use this landmark to sell some resources, which he's already done. And then he goes castle, as we can see. There we go. And at this point in the Castle Age, what you're going to end up doing is Horse Archer, I think, is a very strong composition in this matchup. And I'm going to pause it here just to kind of explain this. Horse Archer is, while it's going to be a unit we talk about a decent amount in these kind of overviews and stuff, it is not a unit that you're going to make in every matchup. In this matchup, though, I do think Horse Archers are a good Castle Age unit. The reason being is most HRE players are going to go in infantry or cavalry-based focus, so you can go Horse Archer, Knight, and then Siege to siege down your opponent, which I think is very strong against HRE. The other nice thing is when going Castle Age, as you're going to notice, is we're going to have the Abbey of Trinity, which again I think is a great choice. I mean, this is the landmark you're going to do most of the time anyway right now. But this allows us again to get that warrior monk to secure the relics. Our goal would be to deny the HRE player from getting 2 relics if possible. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that's very, very hard to do. 2 relics is pretty easy for HRE to get, even in this situation where he's not even Castle Age yet. Because it takes time, right? You have to make a warrior monk, which takes 45 seconds. It has to run all the way across the map, grab the relic, slow walk its butt back, place it in there, and then you can obviously you'll use a second one to grab another. Whereas HRE already has the prelate and can grab the relics. But the point of this game at this point is, again, to deny resources, secure the relics, and utilize your tech advantage. So what we're going to see here is we're Castle Age. We're going Horse Archers. We don't have the gold at the moment or the resources to get what we need to, but we do want to get the +2 ranged attack as soon as possible. And then once the relic gold and stuff kicks in, you're going to get Boyar's Fortitude. Now, I am going to say horsemen are actually pretty good against horse archers until you have a massive of horse archers. And then also with your own knights is what'll stop the horsemen from destroying your horse archers. But as you can see, we're getting the relics. We have 1. We grab this relic. Okay, we do have... I think what Wham should have done in this game also is I think he should have gone for this relic first and this relic. If he grabbed these 2 relics, I think he could have denied relics from the HRE player. Because as you can see, the HRE player is just now going Castle Age. Anyway, we're going to just skip forward here. And you're going to see a little mistake. The warrior monk stopped moving, and then Castle was able to kind of secure these 2 relics, which I don't think should have ever happened. I think it was a mistake, but that's besides the point. This is just kind of going over the general matchup. So we're going Horse Archers. You're going to notice we're making Knights. Surprisingly, he hasn't gotten the +2 range attack, but I think he should have. And then at this point, you can do a couple of things. I think you can either go 2 TC and then go aggressive, or you can just go straight to aggression. It kind of depends on what you want to do or how comfortable you are. I do think Rus versus HRE late game is, I'd say it probably I think it slightly favors HRE. Streltsy are really good, but HRE can really mask that siege, because with 2 relics, that's 600 gold a minute, passive income, which is more than what we're going to have. We only have 2 relics right now, 200 gold a minute. We do have the Sacred Site, so that's 300, but this is a consistent 600 gold per minute. And then Culverins actually do obviously counter Springolds now. Now that the Roost doesn't get that extreme abusive Springolds where it could outrange every other siege in the game. I do think this matchup is, the late game I think is good for HRE. I don't think it's that much favored in HRE. I think Rus can win a late game. I do think I would favor HRE slightly if it gets to Imperial Age. Assuming both players are in the same, are even and not super behind. But in this stage, what Wham's doing is he's keeping his archers, but he's not making more. He's going Horse Archer, he's going Knights, which again I think is a perfect composition. And then he's adding Siege, Trebuchets because to take down the towers, and then he'll use his Horse Archers and Archers to take out Spearmen, and then any Knights will just be taken care of by your own Knights. And again, like I said, Horse Archers do 12 damage without any upgrades. And then with Warrior's Blessing, it does even more. So it can do, I think you can top out at 16 per shot if you get all the unique upgrades in here. I think it's 16 damage. And, yeah, so we're kind of going to see, in this situation, a Knight, Horseman, Horse Archer, and it's going to kind of crush this fight here, right? Here's the Boyar's Fortitude. It adds +2 attack. Let me make sure that he didn't just get this. Yeah, he didn't. So it's +2 attack, which again, I didn't know until just now. So he's doing 15 damage instead of 12 because of that bonus. Knights are doing +2 as well. And then we're going to see that that arm just got completely cleaned up. And then we see the GG. And then as you can see here, without the buff, it's +1 because of the +1 attack. So 15 and then 13. So that's what you do. This is again a very strong build, Aiga's build. If you can kill him with it, go for it, but this is a good way to transition to the Castle Age if you do not think you can kill your opponent. One thing a lot of players will do is they will be over aggressive and go from a good position to a bad because they refuse to transition to Castle Age. Remember, the build is to deny resources, not necessarily kill your opponent. Hopefully this helps you in this matchup, and we are going to move on to the next one. Alright, this next matchup is Rus versus Mongols. In this game, we're going to be looking at UE Metal versus Wham again. Now, this is a matchup that I actually think is pretty good for Rus, or at least for me when I play as Rus. I actually don't mind this matchup like I used to. You don't usually get Tower Rush because it's just not as strong versus Rus. Rus is going to make their own tower anyway, no matter what. Which should deny any towers over here. So, for example, Wooden Fortress here, you're not going to get a tower here to deny wood lines. You could try it here, but I don't think it's worth the effort, especially since Rus will just make scouts from their hunting cabin and just burn that down before it can really become a threat. So you don't really see tower rushes in this matchup very often. The other thing is in this matchup is I think the best way to play it is to go fast castle. The opening, by the way, is going to be the same, and it's the same in pretty much all matchups. You're always going to start out here. You're going to go get a scout, fast wheelbarrow, feudal. Now, in this matchup in particular, though, I do think there's an argument not to take the boar as Rus. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the times, no matter how well you place your wooden fortress, if you take the boar, the Mongol player will come out with a few spears and a villager, and they'll build a tower to where their arrow slits will deny you the boar. So this is kind of a matchup where I actually don't think you should necessarily go for the boar. I mean, you can, but I think there's a good chance it's also going to be denied, so I think there's a good argue case not to do it. In this game, what we're going to see is we are not going to see that done. We're going to see UE Metal do... He's going to go professional scouts, and he's just going to grab all the deer instead and make a couple knights to secure that. A fine way to play. I have no hatred against it or anything. I personally would not do that, but I do. He still does what I would have done. Fast castle, makes a few extra scouts, and then he's going to go knight archer. Or not, sorry, not knight archer, knight horse archer. And this game's going to kind of showcase why this composition is actually pretty strong, even versus Mongols. Because we're going to see Wham here do Lancer Archer. But as we're going to see here, got a lot of sheep. He's going to gather some gold because he's making knights, so he doesn't have as much gold as he normally would to go fast castle. So we're just going to kind of skip forward just so we can showcase that here real quick. And he got enough there, I think. Not sure. But yeah, he's just going to go for professional scouts, get the deer instead. Kind of like an old-style fast castle build. I do think it slows down the fast castle, though, because we're going to notice that it's 8 minutes, and we're still halfway. We still need halfway more to get the fast castle. If he'd gone straight for the boar and assumed he could have kept it without any penalties, then I think he would have been advancing almost a minute ago. So the reason why I think fast castle is better than doing the Aiga's build or the aggressive stance is by the time you can be aggressive with Rus, whether you're going to go for the boar or whatever, if you want to do the 3 archery range, 3-4 archery range, or knight archer or spear archer pressure, by the time you can get a ram out, the Mongol player will be fast castle, and their fast castle their castle age tech, men at arms, their lancers will just destroy the push, and it makes it very difficult. So what you end up doing is you actually don't end up doing much damage, because one thing about Mongols is they have a tight-knit economy. You can't really raid their wood line, and you can't raid their food line because they have pastures. There is some RNG where maybe this gold mine, let's say this was his closest gold mine, so he doesn't have the protection of the town center. And then you can talk about maybe denying that, but even still, I think the Mongol fast castle counters that aggressive Rus build. So what I think the best way to go is to go fast castle. which is what we've done here. Same concept. You're going to go warrior monks. You're going to go horse archer for map control. You're going to have some extra scouts because anyone who's played against Mongols knows that they love their towers. We can see that Wham is building towers everywhere. And you're going to want the kind of scouts to burn that down so that you can kind of retain map control. And then you're going to notice something that the Rus player is doing is they're going for a quick second TC, which again I think is a very good call. At this stage in the game, we have Castle Age, our opponent doesn't. Wham was kind of doing a horseman spearman aggression, which I think kind of messed up his build. His Castle Age is almost 11 minutes, and I think that was just a mistake on his part. I think he was trying something, I'm not sure. I'm not going to talk for him, don't know. But that's besides the point. At this point, we can just secure the relics, get a second TC to get our economy rolling, start spamming these horse archers. And you'll notice, again, using these scouts to take out the tower. And then secure the relics, because again, that free gold is so important to get that gold. And then shortly here, you're going to see we're going to have a siege workshop. This is, again, so we can actually attack. You're going to make a trebuchets, and you are going to need springolds, most likely. Or mangonels, at least. I should say mangonels, not springolds. Because the other strong thing about going horse archer knight or horse archer scout and knight is horse archers actually, if you have a big enough mass, can kill mangonels pretty quickly. Add to the fact that you'll have knights and scouts yourself, then you can definitely kill siege really quickly with that without needing springolds. So one of the rare situations where I think you don't necessarily need springolds as Rus. Those springolds will make it easier because if your opponent has a formidable army, you have to remember that if you're attacking a mangonel, you're not attacking his army and his army is attacking you. So it's kind of a trade-off. It depends on the situation on whether you want to commit to that or make sure you have your own springolds. Another thing you want to do, much like how Mongols spams outposts, again, you want to spam your own wooden fortresses. I talked about this in other matchups, but it's just good to know because you'll know when your enemy is moving around, you don't get snuck up upon, and it's good for map control in general. And then so what you want to do at this point is, again, it is against Mongols, so it is very difficult to raid their economy. The real only thing you can raid is their gold, because again, pastures with food means you're never going to be able to go run in here and get their food with your horse archers. They're always going to have their town center or town centers next to wood. But their gold, they can't be that protective against, so you can be aggressive versus that. Step readout didn't build here, a little mistake. You can't really... The only thing you can do about their stone is you can take out their, their uvu. But again, that's not villager kills. This is 150 wood building for the Mongols. But as you're going to start seeing, we're now starting to add in knights. Again, you want to get a healthy amount of horse archers. Once your economy is really rolling, you start adding in the knights. Again, we have Boyar's Fortitude, which I actually just realized I never explained, but what that is it gives extra, it's 20 health extra to every cavalry unit. That includes the scout, that includes the warrior monk, the horse archer, and the knight. So it's very strong. So instead of 85 health, it has 105 health. A very, very strong upgrade, especially in the Castle Age. Which, and then, again, with the warrior monk buff, it's even better, right? So we're going to kind of skip forward here. We see that we're running around the map, which is what you should be doing. You should be just, see if you can do any damage. Not the best engagement there. But we're going to see Archer Knight. We're going to see Archer Lancer from Wham. And we're going to see that it doesn't go very well because because Knight Horse Archer is actually very strong versus this composition. Now again, I want to state this game did go a little odd because he didn't get Castle Age till about 11 minutes, which means he doesn't have a bunch of mangonels, he doesn't have his springolds out. He doesn't have advanced siege engineering because his Ubu got taken out. So kind of stuff like that may not 100% demonstrate what I'd like to in this matchup, but it does demonstrate the composition I like to go, which is again Knight, Horse Archer, Siege, Utilize that to maintain map control. It's also very mobile. As you can see, what he's doing is he's burning down outposts so that that vision goes away from the Mongol player. And then from there, we just kind of go through, and you're going to clean up this army with the knights, because the knights are going to melt to the horse archer plus knights. That bonus, as you can see, the blessing, and then this army just melts, and wham, GG's out of the game. So this is how I also like to play the Rus versus Mongol matchup. I think this is very strong, and I think it's, yeah, like I said, the best way. Again, I'm not going over every possible way to play it, but this is my preferred way to play against Mongols as Rus. Time for the next matchup. This is going to be Rus versus English. Again, I want to reiterate that unfortunately I can't go over my own replays for these because, well, they're either out of date and there's no way to go past 10. Hopefully one day Relic makes it so that you can actually access replays longer than a day or two if you play almost every day. But that's besides the point. This is a matchup between Beastie Cutie and Edenov. Rus versus English, and this has a couple ways you can play about it. I don't think there's necessarily one you should do this and it's the only way to go in the matchup. One method that you want to do, again, the opening is going to be the same as every others which I've gone earlier in this video, where you're going to put 2 immediately on wood, pretty much 2 to make that hunting cabin, 1 for house lumber. Put these on the lumber camp, make a 3rd scout. Your goal is again to get all the wolves, as many hunts, wolves, deer as you can, and obviously sheep. You're going to go for an early wheelbarrow, and so on. So BC actually goes for 4 scouts, it looks like, which is interesting. Some players do that. Again, I don't think that's a bad or a good thing necessarily. It's just kind of personal preference. We've got wheelbarrow on the way, and now to kind of talk about what you can do in this matchup. In the Rus versus HRE portion of this guide, I went over the Aigas build where you're super aggressive, and you can use that method to hold off English aggression as well. But this is very dependent on what the English player is doing. If I scout my opponent doing this, where they made a full 8 farms, and obviously are advancing late, I am going to do a fast castle. I think the best response to this playstyle from English, this is pretty standard almost at this point in time, at least at the higher level. If I scout this, I am going to go fast castle. Now, let's say my opponent was not doing this and was doing a standard English aggressive build. Then what I would do is I would still go for the boar, wooden fortress, arrow slits, and then I would go the Aigas build of making a ton of archers and overwhelming that aggression. The Rus build is actually very strong versus English all-ins, because you can pump out, assuming again you get your economy set up properly, you can pump out so many units that you can hold back the all-in that English is going to do. You can also add in knights yourself, or you can go horseman archer. Either way, you should never go spear archer, of course. It should be horse archer or knight archer is what you want to do if you're going to do the Aigas portion of the build. So what we're going to see, though, is we've scouted, our beastie has scouted this full transition here. He's still going to go for the boar, which, again, you should always do. I think you should always go for the boar. And what you're going to see here is he does it over here so that he can generate some gold with this hunting cabin. He's going to take this, finish his hunting cabin, and then he's going to make a wooden fortress. And now, against English, you need to have arrow slits. I cannot emphasize that enough. Do not try to skip arrow slits when going wooden fortress. The reason why is because longbows can actually snipe these villagers if you don't have a wooden fortress with arrow slits. And I think even actually with the arrow slits, there's an angle that you can attack from, I think, right here, where you can kill villagers, which I think the English player actually does, if I recall, in this game. I only briefly glanced through it to make sure that it kind of did what I would personally do, and what BC does in this game is pretty much my reaction to what I would have done. Obviously probably not as good as him because he's a better player, but that's besides the point. As you can see, though, we're gathering that food. We're gathering those ticks for the Golden Gate so that we can sell wood or food to get to that fast castle age. You're going to notice that we did buy 100 stone because you need to get that arrow slits. It's just so important. But you are going to notice that, unfortunately, this is kind of where I think this wooden fortress, while this is a good spot, it did leave a little vulnerability in this little corner with where the boar was placed. If this wooden fortress was placed a little closer, like maybe right here, I think it would have been it would have covered the boar so that the English player could not do this, where he could sneak around and attack the villagers from this angle. Obviously, it's really hard to test, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. If it was right here, I think this boar is 100% safe, these villagers are safe, and there's nothing he would be able to do. I mean, even with it over here, though, that arrow slits kind of prevents it, but the English player is doing a good job denying the boar from here. But as you can see, we're going Castle Age, again, with that beautiful Abbey of Trinity, with the goal to get relics, and then you just want to be able to add in siege and whatnot. So what I would do, and I think this is what BC does in this game, is I would go throw down these barracks, and you're going to go men-at-arms. Because you've already seen the English players invested at, I think, 12 longbows, 14 longbows. So his castle age is going to be significantly delayed. And you should always be scouting, because the amount of villagers on gold show what the opponent's going for. If you see 6 on gold, early on especially, then you know he's going for fast castle, and he's not doing an all-in feudal aggression build. Now, as you're going to see, this English player actually killed 4 villagers here with these longbows. Again, I think if this was placed here, I don't think that would have ever happened, but that's, again, just nitpicking, which there's no point which isn't the point of this. But as you can see, we're Castle Age. We're making a warrior monk, and we're pumping out men-at-arms, and we're also getting the armor upgrade for the arrows so that our men-at-arms, so longbows only do 1 damage to men-at-arms instead of 2 or 3. We're just going to kind of skip forward. As we've scouted here, our opponent's going for a second TC, which actually I think is a huge mistake on their part. I think this is actually not what you should do as English, but again, I'm trying to go over briefs, not necessarily the replay. So, but getting men-at-arms and then pressuring your opponent is what I would do, which is, again, I'm pretty sure BC, that's what BC's up to right now. He's just going to harass. And at this point, the goal of these men-at-arms is to keep your opponent busy while you secure the relics, you secure map control. What I would like to have done is placed a wooden fortress here. I like the wooden fortress here as well. It secures the sacred site. You've also got the relic, as again, 2 relics, 2 sacred sites, 2 wooden fortresses. And then utilizing these men-at-arms to force, it forces idle town center or idle villager time, because as you can see, these men-at-arms just tank arrow fire. You're going to see that here in just a moment. You're noticing that the reason why he didn't move in is he's waiting for his +2 ranged armor. Just to make sure that they don't do much damage. You're going to see, look how little damage these arrows are doing to these men-at-arms. They got damaged earlier before they got +2 armor. But look at that. 10 health a shot. It's yeah, 12, you know, because it's 12 damage a shot. We're denying the Castle Age. During this time, we're going to keep rallying men-at-arms. And again, securing the sacred sites, wooden fortresses for map control. And then as you're going to get gold, you're going to eventually make a siege workshop, because you do want mangonels versus English. Mangonels are very good, especially versus Castle Age English right now, due to the recent ranged buff. And then as we secure all the relics, you know, we're going to have 3 sacred sites. Let's pretend we get 5 relics. That's 800 gold a minute. And it's very difficult for the English player to deal with these men-at-arms right now. And then behind this, now you don't want to just necessarily, if you're not doing damage or anything, you might not want to commit all the way. But I think this is perfect. You're killing villagers, you're denying the Castle Age, and the longer you deny the Castle Age, the more of an advantage you get, as you have better tech, better upgrades, better units. You are expected to lose these men-at-arms, because again, these aren't meant to kill your opponent. They're just to... Look at all this idle time. 17 villagers idle, 9 villagers idle, 5 in the tower. Denying that Castle Age for so long. It's just a lot of idle economy, and that's the goal, to hurt your opponent. It is not meant to kill them. So while this is going on, you should be doing what BC does, securing the sacred sites, securing map control, gathering, look at that. Now we're at 900 gold. We're going to be making a siege workshop here soon. At least I would hope. Another thing that you can do, we have 6 ticks. You can buy a second town center, which is, I would have done that. I don't think BC is going to do that this game. We're just going to kind of fast forward because at this point, the composition you want to go for in Castle Age is, this is the first matchup I've gone through so far, we are not going to go Horse Archers. Horse Archers are not what you want to do against English. Longbows absolutely destroy them, and then Longbow Knight is going to destroy Horse Archer Knight, for example. So a good composition is to go Men-at-Arms Siege, Men-at-Arms Crossbow Siege is probably, if you need to. You want the crossbows for Knights plus if they go Men-at-Arms. But as you're going to see, securing the middle with these, you do want to do this. This allows you to, again, have full vision so your opponent can't sneak by without your knowledge. And then behind this, we're getting a Siege Workshop to add in Mangonels. We're still pumping out Men-at-Arms. And I'm not sure if... because Men-at-Arms Mangonel is a very strong composition versus English, so either way, I don't disagree with the composition at all. I definitely don't think you need to rush out. You don't need to rush out crossbows. Not at first. We're just going to see him chasing these longbows for a little bit. Again, we're just pumping out the Mangonels. I think 3 Siege Workshops might be a little overkill, but who am I to question one of the best players in the world? But what I would have done is, I agree with 2 Siege Workshops, and he's just going to go Men-at-Arms, Mangonel, which again is very strong versus English. English players, they kind of struggle to make Springolds. They also don't have the passive gold income in the Castle Age like Roos does. So as Roos, with that, we're at 1,000 gold right now without mining it at all. So we can pump out these Mangonels, we can pump out Springolds so that if the English player decides to go Springolds, we snipe his Springolds with our superior number of Springolds because we have a better economy for it. A better wood-gold economy for it, to be specific. And then Mangonels will take care of his longbows, and then our Men-at-Arms will do they do pretty good versus his. Okay, I don't know why the opponent made siege towers, but that's a thing, I guess. I'm guessing a misclick, maybe? Not sure. But either way, as you can see, we have 5 Mangonels, 3 Springolds. Our opponent just isn't going to really be able to do much against this. 1 Springold isn't going to do anything. Obviously, it's the Sacred Site victory is why he's rushing this. And then this game's just going to kind of end. There's really not much else to talk about in this one. I guess he did it to try to move closer to the siege. Kind of an interesting way to go about it. But that's kind of the point of these. Anyway, I'm not going to go over that. This game, unfortunately, we can't go too much further in the unit compositions because it does go to a Sacred Site victory. But the siege, very strong versus English. Men-at-Arms, very strong versus English. Like I said, I wouldn't have hated adding in Knights, but you don't really have the food eco with what BC was going for. He was kind of going for the Sacred Site victory, keeps, towers, and that was kind of his end goal since he had complete map control for so long, since the opponent wasn't feudal. But what I would have done is I would have made a second TC a lot sooner, and then probably gone for a Men-at-Arms siege, and then add in with a mix of crossbows. Maybe Knights as well. Kind of just you do have to adapt to your opponent a bit here with your unit composition, right? So if you see your opponent going longbows, Men-at-Arms, then you can probably just stay Men-at-Arms siege and you're going to be just fine. But if you see your opponent adding in Knights, it's probably a good idea to add in crossbows or Knights yourself, because your Knights are going to be stronger than English Knights once you get Boyar's Fortitude. Either way, this is a good composition that you want to go for. Siege is a number one thing you want against English. It's just so powerful against them. English struggle against siege in the Castle Age. Obviously, the later the game goes, I don't think they struggle against it as much, just because trebuchets do pretty good versus it. They have a really sick gold and economy in general with farms. So this is kind of the composition you want to go for. If you do end up getting to the late game as Rus, you're going to want to go a mix of probably Streltsy, archers. Obviously, again, you still want mangonels, bombards, just the overall siege composition, mixing some springles to counter their siege. In the later the game goes, though, it does start switching to English favored. This matchup in general, I think, is a pretty... I think Castle Age favors Rus, especially with the recent mangonel buff. And then Imperial, though, I think is when it starts swinging to English, because longbows do very well versus Streltsy. So Streltsy aren't the end-all unit like in most other matchups. In every other matchup in the game, when you get to Imperial as Rus, you want to go Streltsy. Versus English, you still want to add in Streltsy, but it's not going to be your main carry. You want to be mixing in horsemen, knights, archers. I'd probably switch away from men-at-arms in the Imperial Age because English ones are a lot better. And then siege. And that's kind of how you want to go. If you have any more questions on this portion, do feel free to ask in the below. There's only so many. There's really hard to find many replays to showcase everything, so I just kind of have to tell you a lot of it, which may not help as much since you can't showcase it all. But that's kind of how I play the Rus versus English. Is very similar to how BC played it. Obviously, he didn't go for the town center approach because he had such early map control, which allowed him to get the sacred sites. Trying to go for both, I think he could have done, though, judging by the resources, though. So now we'll move on to the next matchup. All right, welcome back to the next portion, which is going to be Rus versus Abbasid. This is a matchup that I think favors Rus. I think this is a pretty heavily favored Rus matchup. Maybe not heavily, but I do think it's a Rus favored matchup. This is going to be a good demonstration of the Aigas, or the very feudal, aggressive, heavy Rus build. That I think is probably the go-to decision against Abbasid regardless. I think if Abbasid goes 2 TC, it is very, very, very hard to hold the aggressive Rus build that I've talked about previously, where you're going boar, you're placing your archery ranges at the boar location, and then you're just ramming and being super aggressive versus the opponent. Like everything else, very similar opening. Start out 2 on wood and go there and, build that. For those who are skipping portions, if you are curious, wait, why aren't you talking about the opening more? I have talked about it in all the other matchups, Rus versus HRE, Mongols, and English. Feel free to go to there to talk about it. I don't want to have every section be the same intro when it's, I think it's pretty, kind of gets, people are going to be like, okay, I've heard this already, and just skip forward. So we're just going to kind of skip forward here because the aim of the game is to just be super aggressive. You can probably kill the Abbasid, but at minimum you should be able to take out the second TC or at least delay or deny resources. Like, the Abbasid player should not be able to secure these hunts or these berries if you're playing correctly, I feel. Very, very hard to take these when you just have units, because the Roosters can just pump out so many units against Abbasid here. So we're just going to kind of skip forward to the Feudal Age where we can really talk about the aggressive. Now, there is another way you could play against Abbasid. I'm not a big fan of it, though. And that is going fast castle, and then you can try going knight, horse, archer, or you can go archer, knight, or something like that, and then make a second town center and secure the relics. I'm not as big of a fan of that style versus Abbasid, as I think that actually plays into Abbasid. I think Abbasid wants you to do that, because then that means if they see you're going fast castle, they know that their second TC, they don't have to worry about aggression. They can just pump out their villagers, their cheap villagers, go straight to castle, not long after you, and then they're going to feel very comfortable going into the middle game because they can build their siege on the field, and they'll have a strong economy to just really pressure you. Whereas your second TC is going to be a lot later if you go 2 TC. I mean, while you can go siege, Abbasid can build their siege with their infantry, which saves them 400 wood from a siege workshop. Obviously, to make a trebuchet, they have to make a siege workshop, but that's besides the point. So, very standard opening here. This is what I would be doing. I'm going to take 8 villagers, going to take this boar. The reason why we're taking this boar is it is closer to the Abbasid player, which means our military reinforcements are going to be closer. This boar over here is just kind of more out of the way. So, and then you're going to... Honestly, I don't think this was necessary. Well, okay, actually, I guess he scouted the horsemen, so if you scout this, actually, I agree with this. It just keeps your villagers safe. In almost every instance, you're going to make a wooden fortress next to the boar for a couple of reasons. I'm going to pause this just to kind of explain why. For starters, it stops raids like this, horseman raids. Second, if you do find that you're getting pushed back with your army, instead of letting it die, you can run back to this wooden fortress, fill it with your villagers or your military, whichever, and then your opponent is kind of forced to back off, which means you can save significant portions of your army by doing that. Obviously, if you're completely caught out of position, that it's still pretty far away in this particular game, but that is why you will generally see this regardless, even if raids aren't a concern. And we're going to see stable to make a knight, this for upgrades, and obviously siege engineering, and then 3 archery ranges to just pump out those archers. This build is, again, it's very strong, and I think like knight archer from Rus is going to be far stronger than horseman archer from Abbasid, and you're going to see why in this game. We're obviously gathering gold to keep that knight production. This is something I like to do versus Abbasid, is just do the knight archer. I think it's stronger than going archer spear, and especially if your opponent's doing horseman archer, you're just going to scale better because your knights are better than their horsemen, and they're just going to kind of destroy this army once you kind of get the mass that you need. Now to kind of pause this real quick, because this is a shorter replay, and I don't have to go as in-depth, because this matchup in general just kind of plays out this way, is if he was going spear horseman, I would do knight archer and mix in some spears myself. I think adding some spears against horsemen is very strong when your opponent's going horseman archer or horseman spear, because horsemen melt to spearmen, and if you have knights and archers, your archers are going to destroy his spears, and then your spears are going to destroy his horsemen, and your knights can do that too, and also you can raid if needed. But I do think this is a weaker composition. I think archer horseman is a weaker composition than spearman horseman as Abbasid versus Rus when they're doing this aggressive build. And you're going to kind of see why, because as Rus, you don't have to pull back. You can just engage the army. There's no spears you have to worry about, and your archers are going to destroy his archers because you're going to have more, because this, like I said, you just pump them out here. And then you're going to see we're getting siege engineering now. And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to deny this food. And a good thing that you can do, and what you should be doing, is probably having a knight or sending a knight at some point to this portion of the map. You should always keep an eye on your opponent's resources, where they can take resources. Especially when you're aggressive, because as you're going to see here, BC's already doing it. If you know that your opponent is going to be running out of food and you have this locked down so he can't take these resources, where's he going to get his food? Right here. This is the only other spot that he can get food, so it's a good idea to start sending knights, which you have, to go harass this portion and kill some villagers. As we're going to see, we're going to, again, 2 free villager kills. And he's hurting for food, right? This is not what you want to do, as almost any civ in the game is be making farms in this position. You want to be gathering those berries or the hunts. But he can't because he got an unfortunate spawn. But also, so we're going to pause this here because there's really not much else to talk about in this game in particular. This shows what I would do, though. I would have done exactly what BC was doing. Knight archer, make rams, get upgrades, harass this area with knights. Deny, make sure he never can take these resources. Once running out of this boar, I 100% agree with taking these hunts. You have the map control. And then adding in rams to take out, the production buildings and the outposts. Now, let's say that Puppy held this aggression and this game goes into Castle Age. The unit composition I would go for would be crossbows, probably crossbow knight with my own siege. I think is a pretty strong composition. I don't like horse archers in this matchup very much, but I don't think it's bad necessarily. That's just a personal opinion of mine. If this game goes into Imperial Age, then what you want to do is go Streltsy, add in horsemen, and obviously your own siege. I think it's a very strong late game army. Because Streltsy just absolutely melts almost anything the Abbasid player can do. Your own siege will deal with clumps of archers, and then you can obviously afford to make Springolds and whatnot to counter their Mangonels. Of course, you do have to watch out for their Culverins, which will counter your Springolds, but you should be able to mass more Springolds than they can Culverins. And then that's kind of how you want to play the game. But this aggression, I think, is very important, and I think you should do this. Honestly, I would do this versus Abbasid, whether they go 1 TC or 2 TC. And again, you don't have to kill your opponent. One thing you should always remember when doing this build is you're using it for map control and to deny resources. If you can kill your opponent, go for it, right? You don't want to just let your opponent do whatever. But if you're like, oh man, this is too close to call, I really don't know if I'd win the fight, don't take the fight. What you can do instead is secure your position, maybe make a couple wooden fortresses up front. And then you can use this Golden Gate, which you're going to have ticks open. You're going to have probably 5 to 10 ticks, depending on how long the game's been going. And you just end up building these up in this matchup, particularly when doing this build, because you don't need to use these very often. And then what you can do is you can use it to go Castle Age, get the relics, get another town center, and just start pressuring with trebuchets, and then if it needs to go Imperial, it goes Imperial. But overall, this is the build I would always do in this matchup, regardless of what my opponent is doing. I'm going to be doing the aggressive build with archery ranges, might add in some spearmen, and then just kind of transitions from there. It's really hard to go too in depth because there's just so many things that can happen, and I can't possibly go over them all, but I can go over the basics like this. And this is the basic version of what I would do, and then just transition as you need to. And that's pretty much Rus versus Abbasid in a nutshell. There's really not much else to add to this matchup that I can think of. So we're just going to move on to the next one now. Alright, Rus versus French. Arguably Rus's hardest matchup in the game, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And the reason being is because French has the advantage in pretty much every way versus Rus. French knights are stronger. They do a little bit extra damage with their charge, and they heal, whereas the Rus knights don't. Their villagers build faster, and pretty much everything in the feudal age. This is going to be a French favored matchup, in my experience. There's a couple ways you can play this matchup. There's the way that Dio does, and I just want to state for the record, it was a real pain in my butt to find a French versus Rus. I had to look up a bunch of French mains, and Kawayan was one of the only ones I could find that had a versus Rus matchup. So this is a very hard matchup to find, and it doesn't go exactly what I would do, but it does do another method you can do. So while this is going, the method I prefer versus French is to go fast castle. I think going horse archer knight is a strong composition. When you go fast castle, you grab the relics, you make a pretty quick second TC after that. I think the longer you stay in feudal in most situations is going to be better for French. But there's other ways to play it too. The way that I'm pretty sure this is divine, by the way. I'm like 99% positive it's divine. The way he plays it is another method. I'm personally not the biggest fan of it, but it does end up. But it's still a strong method, though. It's still a way to deal with it. So what he's going to end up doing is he actually is not going to go for the boar. He's going to go for a second town center down here, or up here. And he's going to go for 3 stable knights, and he's going to go knight archer, whereas Kawayan decides to go for knight archer spearman. And I think this is kind of why this don't really like 100% what Kawayan does in this one either. Um, in general, if as Rus, what you want to do though is you want to go for either the hunts with this or a boar. If you're going to go for a second TC approach, this is the better option. I think what Divine did here is much smarter than going. You obviously don't want to make a second TC here, and you don't want to make a second TC here. That's just too rammable. So if you're going to go the 2 TC method, doing something like this is how you want to do it. You want it in a safe location next to a group of hunts if possible, so that you have food secured. What we're going to see here is we're going to start seeing stables come down. The opening, again, is very similar to the rest. There's not really too much to talk about in that regard. You're going to spend the two clicks of stone to get the town center. And then with this build, you're going to go for 3 stables. The reason I'm not the biggest fan of this is I think Kawaiian reacted to this poorly. He's still making archers, even though he is aware of 3 stables. I think as French, you should be adding in more stables yourself at this point and going a heavier knight composition, because your knights are going to be better than the Rus knights in the feudal age. In the castle age, I'm actually not sure whose knights are better. And the reason I say that is because Rus, assuming French doesn't go for the Royal Institute, they have Boyar's Fortitude to give your knights that extra 20 health. And French does not. So I'm not sure what is stronger, though the French knights can still heal. So, and they still do a little bit of extra damage. So I still think French knights are slightly better, but with Boyar's Fortitude, I do think knights are a strong composition. If you want to do my style of play against French, all you need to do is look at my Rus versus Rus matchup. That's kind of how I play Rus versus French. Except I'll actually, depending on what my French player opponent is doing, I might go knights first instead of horse archers, and then add in horse archers afterwards. Either way, we're going to go over this style of method, but if you're curious, just look at Rus versus Rus, and that's pretty similar to how I play it. Rus versus French. I feel like just a prolonged feudal warfare is very, very challenging. I think in this game in particular, I think Kawaiian just, he never really went heavy on the knights for some reason. He only has, I'm just making sure before I say it, he only has 1 stable when he should be on two stable knights, in my opinion. At minimum. Especially after seeing this. But anyway, so what we're going to do is you're going to see a bunch of knights. Divine is reacting to a bunch of spearmen. He sees the spear archer, so he's going to go archers himself so that he can take care of the spearmen, which I think is a strong composition. I think in this scenario, I do think the knight archer is going to be far stronger than knight archer spear, because he doesn't have many knights and he doesn't have that many spearmen. And I think at this point you just gotta, you want to be as patient as possible if you're playing an all-in like this, because you have all these stables, or you have 2 TCs, you have an eco advantage, you just gotta wait to get the units necessary. I'm gonna pause this here just because I want to go over the matchup and not just this facing an all-in. While this method does work, and he does hold with this, I do think the fast castle method also works. But let's say that French is going 2 town centers. You have a couple ways to deal with French in 2 town centers. You can go a second town center yourself, which again, it's not that I dislike it, but I wouldn't personally do it. I still think going fast castle, securing the relics, and then getting a second town center is stronger than going fast second town center, and then you both get castle at the same time. Because the French player will have a better economy than you no matter what, because he gets villagers out faster. But if you get that faster castle age, you can utilize horse archers and then eventually mixing in knights to kind of deny like these hunts, for example, from the French, harass these hunts, and kind of restrict the French to having to go farms earlier than they want to. And then while you're using the map control to secure relics, sacred sites, you're also going to be going for siege as well. And then the French player's castle age will be behind you. And if they're all-inning you, then you have, if you go knights in the castle age, your knights will be stronger than his because you have castle age versus feudal age. Though, feudal age knights are still strong, so you do got to play it safe, and you just got to react appropriately with the right units. Um, in this stage, though, we're just going to see Knight Archer, which is going to end up holding this off. This is a very scary army, by the way, right? You see this, and I think if the French player had gone a little bit heavier on the Knights, I think he would have actually won this game, because I just don't think feudal warfare works against French. It's very hard anyway, but it does in this game, because he just never had enough Knights. He only had like 8 Knights compared to 14 of the Rus player here. And then from here, the game's going to be kind of over. And like I said, this isn't supposed to be a go over replays of only the replay. I want to go over the matchup. So this style of play is a way you can do it as well. I actually also wouldn't hate Knight Arch or Knight Spear. Knight Spearman is an okay way to also play, but I still personally think the fast castle method is the best way to go. But this is also a good way, because if your opponent does do a 1 TC all in like that, and you have 2 TC going, and you don't lose many villagers, you're going to be in a very good position, as we're going to see here. Rus is in a super good spot. They held that all in, and they have 2 town centers. We have 57 villagers to 53. It's only a 4 villager lead, so not as bad as you would think, but it is better than being 1 TC feudal. Either way, I think you have 2 options in this matchup. You either go 2 TCs or you go fast castle. I do not think you should ever do 1 TC feudal play, because any unit composition you can do, the French player can do, and his is going to be stronger because his knights are slightly stronger. And he gets faster villagers. So the longer the feudal age goes on, the bigger villager lead the French player is going to get compared to you if you're on 1 TC. So that's how I approach this matchup. I approach it with the fast castle method, but if you don't like that method or you find it doesn't work for you, this is also another great way to do it, where you go for that fast 2nd TC, go 3 stable knights, and then you just kind of have to adapt. If you see the player going, Archer Knight, then I think going Archer Knight yourself is okay, but it is very difficult. I think you just want to try to pump as many knights, and your main goal should be to get to Castle Age, because once you get to Castle Age, it kind of evens out a little bit more. You have more options and a better way to fight the French army in Castle. And then the later the game goes on from there, if it makes it to Imperial Age, it swings pretty hard to Rus side, because Streltsier absolutely dominate the French, and obviously you get cheaper siege, so it ends up working out. Where you just want to go either bombards or trebuchets. It's just, again, it's very situational. And like I've said in many other portions, I can only go so far because the games can go in so many different ways depending on how your opponent plays it. If French goes 2 TC, this game's going to look very different than if you go 2 TC yourself, right? So that's how I approach the matchup. If you want a better detail of how I do the fast castle and you haven't seen it, just watch the Rus versus Rus build that I have earlier in this video. It goes over how to go the fast castle, and that's how I pretty much play against French, except I'll go knights first instead of horse archers, depending on what the French player is doing, if they're going to be aggressive or not. And with that, we're going to move on to the next matchup. And to our final matchup, Rus versus Delhi. This game was in the Golden League Finals, just as an FYI. If you don't want to be spoiled or anything like that, then maybe you don't want to watch this when I'm showing. But this is overall going to show a good example of what I think the best way to play against Delhi is as Rus. In the Feudal Age, I think you have to do the hyper-aggressive, take the boar, make a bunch of archery ranges. You want to add in, you do want to add in spears to counter the horsemen, or go heavy knights archer, one of the two. Either way, I personally prefer the spears, just because horsemen melt the spears, and usually the Delhi player will be going horseman spear, which does counter archer knight until you get a big enough composition. This matchup, the reason why I say I feel it's a very difficult one is I do think you can deny the sacred sites with the feudal aggression as Rus. What makes this matchup so difficult is when the Delhi player hits Castle Age. I think it is very, very hard as a Rus player to... it just feels really hard to play against Delhi when it gets to Castle, because elephants do very well. I don't think horse archers are a good unit to go against Delhi, because, at least in my experience, tower elephants, especially with the scholar healing, absolutely demolish horse archers. So you're kind of left in a weird spot. Like, if you get to Imperial Age, I think Rus is very favored because Streltsy and Delhi Imperial sucks. But in the Castle Age, it's very hard for me to say what the best way to combat it is. I mean, you want to go crossbows, and the reason you want to go crossbows is because they have high DPS. So they do a good amount of damage, even though they're not technically a counter to the elephants. But they still do a lot of damage. You can try like crossbow horsemen, but in general, I still don't really like that composition because it's very hard against Delhi because they can usually get quite a few with their scholars and everything. I think your best chance is to probably, and the other thing, right, is you're not going to secure the relics. Your opponent's going to get the relics because they have their scholars already out, and they should hit Castle Age either as quickly or faster than you will as Rus when it gets that far. So you can't really rely on a relic advantage for Siege. So in general, I think the goal, or at least this is my goal when I play this matchup, is to try to either kill or significantly cripple the Delhi player in Feudal Age. First thing I'm going to try to do is deny the Sacred Sites. You're going to go for the boar, like you do in pretty much every other matchup I've talked about, which is nice, right? Usually the boar, especially on a map like Lipany, is going to be next to a Sacred Site, so you can at least deny one Sacred Site, and there's usually two close together, so you can deny both at the same time. It can be difficult to deny all three, but yeah, it is possible with this kind of aggression. So as we can see, Beastie here is going for the 4 archery range approach. Personally, I don't agree with that part of this build that he did. I think he should have added 1 to 2 barracks and gone archer spear with knights. I think would have been a much stronger composition. But either way, we can kind of see how strong this aggression already is paying off. We're at 9 minutes into the game. Delhi does not have one Sacred Site under their control yet. That's what makes this so... This is where, in the Feudal Age, I think this matchup is actually not bad for Rus. I think this is actually a pretty decent matchup. I still think it's hard to kill, but it is to kill the Delhi player. But I think you can do something. And the goal should be to do a couple of things. I mean, you want to deny Sacred Sites. And I also think you should be aggressive and try to pick off villagers if you can, with knights, harassing with the knights. You do have to be careful though, because if you have only a couple knights, and the Delhi player has, 10 horsemen or 9 horsemen, they are going to be able to surround your knights. So you do got to be careful with that and kind of know where the opponent's army is. So while I agree with going 3 archery ranges, I think we need 2 barracks. So this is the only difference I would make, is I would have added 2 barracks, and I would be pumping archer spear with knights. Probably I wouldn't be doing double stable knights because you can't really afford that, and it's going to be very difficult to do even 1 stable knights with archers plus spear, but I still think it's the best way to go. We are going to note that we got the double broadaxe, which again is the way you want to do this. You get the double broadaxe pretty much the moment you hit feudal if you can. You might have to sell 100 food to do so. And then you want to limit yourself to 16 on wood, and then the rest go on food. And that way you can just, again, pump all these units. And with extra gold and whatnot, you can use this to sell wood or sell food, and then to buy food with gold if you need to. We have 5 ticks. If I was BC right now, I would use a couple ticks to buy some food and wood, so we can continuously be pumping units, because we kind of see we have a little bit of idle time because we were transitioning to a different food source. And then there's this raid here that was also bothering him. I think a couple ticks there would have been able to continue military production. And that's kind of what these ticks are for. When you start floating any resource, you start using them. And as we saw, he actually did buy some, I think he bought food there. And then with that composition, what you're going to do is, like I said, you're going to try to deny the sacred sites. Again, we're at 11 minutes in the game, almost 12 minutes into the game. Delhi only has 1 sacred site, and that should be the most you let a Delhi player get when doing this build. You should be able to deny at minimum 2 of the sacred sites, and then you can start counter-aggressive because you do want to stop the Delhi player from getting castle. I think if you are too passive, then the Delhi player is just going to go castle, which is going to be kind of what Marine Lord does in this game. We're going to see that BC's going just pure archers and only a few knights, and there's a bunch of horsemen here. I mean, these horsemen would just melt these archers, right? But he's using this as a distraction, because if we look at his resources, he's saving food. He has, I guess he's a little bit farther away with gold because he only has one sacred site. But this is kind of where I'm talking about in terms of not have. Oh, it's because he is going castle. And then as we can see, he's going castle, and that's when the game becomes much more difficult. And without spearmen, like, ideally what you would have wanted to do as Beastie here is, if you had spearmen as well, is you'd want to just counterattack when you see his horsemen going this way. I think because the Delhi player wants you to chase his army, and that's one thing you have to realize in this matchup, is the Delhi player is going to try to distract you, and while they're trying to save for castle at some point in the game. And that's when you want to try to attack, because when those horsemen were all over here, imagine if BC had just counterattacked instead. There's no army, right? Marine Lord isn't even going archers. He's going pure horsemen and going castle. If BC had countered, I think he could have done a ton of damage. Obviously, the horseman would have just ran back and cleaned him up eventually, but it still takes time to run all the way from here back to here. So that's kind of one thing you want to be aware of in this matchup, though, is realize when the Delhi player is stalling for time. When you recognize that and you see that Delhi is, they're trying to distract you, sometimes you just have to go, okay, I'm going to attack you and ignore you to try to do as much economic damage or deny their castle age if you can. Because like I've said this many times already in this section, I think Castle Age is very Delhi favored, and I think it's very, very difficult for a Rus player to win once it gets to Castle Age in this matchup. Not saying it's impossible, I just think it is very difficult, just because elephants are very, very strong. And the usual Rus benefits of Castle Age aren't there like in other matchups, because the relics typically go under Delhi control due to them already having scholars, and the Castle Age is going to be just as quick as yours or faster, as we're going to see here. But as we can see, with the Castle Age though, right, there's no tower elephants on the way. Marine Lord can't really afford that yet anyway. He only has one sacred site. If there had been spearmen in this composition, I actually think there's a good chance that BC might have been able to win this game. He was close even without spears, but if he had spearmen, I think he could have, or at least it would have been closer. Obviously, in this game, BC does lose this, and unfortunately, it's just he only has 6 knights. His opponent has 8 knights and 14 horsemen, and 42 archers aren't going to do very much damage to knights, and it's going to be kind of why BC ends up losing this game. He just doesn't have an answer to the knight horseman composition. There's not really much else to go over for this matchup. I kind of went over it on what I would do. And I think this matchup actually demonstrated how strong this composition, or just this feudal aggression, is as Rus, because the Delhi player, they can kind of struggle sometimes. I think if you make the appropriate unit composition, I do think it is winnable in feudal. I think once it gets Castle Age and Delhi has a secure Castle Age, as in, so it's not they don't just hit it, they actually have they've had time to get their economy going a little bit. I think it becomes very, very hard as a Rus player to win, and I think you should be focusing on the feudal aggression, denying the sacred sites, and then trying to attack when you have an opening to, when you think the Delhi player is saving for castle or they're about to start advancing. That is the best time for you to attack, and I can't tell you how many times I've had matchups, or where I've had games where I recognized what my Delhi player was doing, where they were trying to go castle, and I just attacked and won because they were caught with their hand in the cookie jar, as they like to say. With that, that is going to be the end of this section of the guide. There's not really much else to go over because this matchup is pretty one-dimensional. It's pretty much feudal or castle. Very rarely is it going to get to Imperial Age because Castle Age is, like I said, with the elephants, is very Delhi favored, in my opinion. And I think it's very difficult to ever get to Imperial because of that. Because usually the Delhi player will get elephants, and then they push you with a keep, and you don't really have a time to go Imperial. And so with that, we'll end this section here. Whoa, what's going on? You've clicked the China section of this guide, or you're watching this whole video and are wondering about the Rus versus China section. And you're going to notice there is no China versus Rus game I can show you. I could not find a single Rus versus China gameplay at a high level. Um, if there was any, I think they were hidden match history, so I couldn't watch them, unfortunately. So I kind of just have to tell you guys what I would do in this screen because I don't have any replays to go over, unfortunately. Rus versus China is an interesting matchup. In ways, I kind of like to play it like I do versus HRE versus Delhi and Abbasid. Is I like to do the feudal aggression composition, um, where you're just going to do, take the board, build your forward military buildings, and just put on a ton of pressure. You want to try to stop the China player from getting Castle Age, or at least denying resources. If you can deny them from getting castle, because they do have to invest a lot. A good composition I like to do is going Knight Archer. I think it is very strong. But if you are facing Spearman, Spear, Horseman, I actually will go Archer Spear. I do think that's a very superior composition. Then you'll just use rams to try to take out their Barbican. And again, you're just going to try to deny their food resources if you can. If the game goes to Castle Age, I don't think it's a hopeless situation yet. I don't think it's a spot where I think in general Rus versus China's. I don't think it's a bad matchup for Rus. If it gets to Castle Age, you just got to secure the relics. You're going to be making Springolds. That's going to be the number one thing you want to start pumping out because Nested Bees are going to be following shortly after Castle Age, and you do not want to be caught without Springolds. From there, if he does go into, you can try Knight Horseman or Knight Horse Archer. I actually think that's a pretty decent composition. It's hard for me to say though. I haven't been able to test that against China. I don't play against China very often with Rus. It's it's hard for me to say for sure. But I do like that composition, especially with Siege, because Horse Archers are still good, Knights are good, and their castle composition for China is probably going to be Siege. And China wants to get to Imperial Age in general anyway, so you do want to put on the pressure. Horse Archer, Knight, Springold, Trebuchet, mix in a couple Mangonels if your China opponent is going heavy on the Chocanu or something. And then Imperial Age, it's going to be typical Streltsy Siege, and you're going to, try to deny the China from getting their ton of bombards, ton of siege. China is favored in Imperial Age. The later Imperial Age goes, the less likely you are to win because they have grenadiers, they'll have bombards, nested bees. Very difficult. So your goal should be to deny, to not get to Imperial Age. That should be the goal. If you can do that, then you have a pretty good chance at winning. Imperial, though, it becomes harder and harder as China gets their ideal composition, especially if they can start adding in Grenadiers. If they start adding in Grenadiers and their Bombards, I think Rus has a very tough time, regardless of Siege or not. So sorry, guys, again, for not being able to have a replay for this section. Hopefully that helps. The nice thing is a lot of the builds in these matchups have been done in other sections, so you can just look at my Rus versus Abbasid or Rus versus HRE and kind of see, and that's pretty much what I do versus China. There's really not much of a difference. It's just a different civilization, and you just play the Castle Age a little differently depending on, or sometimes the same, actually, if it's like how I play versus HRE. So, again, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask a comment, and I'll see what I can do. In general, I hope you guys enjoyed this section, and yeah. Alright, well, if you've watched this entire video, kudos to you. This is a long video. I'm hoping this helps players who are playing Rus. I don't know if I'm going to do this for any other civilizations. This actually took me quite a lot of time. Finding replays was actually kind of a pain in the ass. And then finding good replays was even harder in some matchups because, like Rus versus French, I couldn't show what I think is better in Rus versus French, but in general, I think I was able to get what I wanted across. Hopefully you enjoyed the videos. Hopefully it helps you as a Roost player if you aren't sure what to do in certain matchups. If you have any questions, please again leave a comment below. I do answer comments. I do have a Discord, and I do stream usually 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm very interactive with chat, and it's just twitch.tv/blade and then 55s. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them there. I will answer and assist in any way that I can. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the guide and have a great rest of your day.